Assalamu alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli waj'al li wazira min ahli هارون أخي أشد به أزري واشركه في أمري كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. All right, dear friends, we are going to start from page 303 of the book, The Words, the 22nd word, second station. So last time we had a break on a Saturday. So we'll continue from where we left off on the confirmation of divine unity. We went through a few of the flashes, second, third, because this section started off mentioning one is a superficial confirmation, which is the common people. Everybody says, yes, I believe in God. Yes, he is the absolute one. One can say that as an information, as knowledge. But the other confirmation is going a little deeper into seeing the unity of God observing the universe, paying attention to it, and realizing the presence of God in each and every aspect of while we're living in this world. So these are some of the flashes the author has been sharing, where he was mentioning about initially the seals of dominical seals, like the signs are all over each and every thing that exists in the universe, points to, glorifies him, the one who made it. So it points to that they are made. So last time we did discuss, I'm revising for myself as well, the samples, honeybee, which is my minute index of most things. And to write in one page, for example, in man, most of the matters in the book of the universe. So I remember a little bit that whatever tools, whatever is used in the universe is also used in each and every thing. For example, from the soil, many things come out in terms of plants, flowers, fruits, trees. In the sea, different kinds of varieties of fish, and on earth, land, many different species, varieties of beings are existing. Heavens has their own different kind of matter that are existing. And whatever is the qualities one sees in the universe is also found in man as well. And now it's going to go into the fourth flash. Look carefully at the multicolored. So it's not just one static kind of universe, but it's a very colorful, multicolored, dynamic, multifarious beings. Look carefully at the multicolored, multifarious beings swimming in the seas of the heavens and scattered over the face of the earth. So carefully observe the birds, the trees, the sky, which we usually just pass by without paying attention to them. Different human beings, everyone has a different face, tells their own story, going through their own whatever thoughts process that they are in, their own dilemmas, their own feelings, all sorts of multicolored, multifarious beings scattered all over the earth. You will see that on each are inimitable signatures of the pre-eternal Son. on each are inimitable signatures of the pre-eternal Son. So each one is unique in that sense, and the way they are made, the way they are existing, they are inimitable. You cannot really make the same thing. Although they may look somewhat alike, for example, some fruits, they look alike, but each and every is in its existence is unique and their creation is inimitable. So inimitable signatures, the qualities of the one who has made the things multicolored, multi-flavored, multifarious, all sorts of varieties, shows inimitable signatures. So just as the stamps on life and seals on living beings are apparent, stamps on life and seals on living beings are apparent. And we saw one or two of them. So are there such signatures on the giving of life. So the act of giving life, there are many signatures as well. The giver of life. Since comparisons being profound meanings. Oh, since comparisons bring profound meanings closer to the understanding, we shall demonstrate this truth with a comparison. So through a comparison, how is the author explaining it? For example, from the planets to droplets of water, to fragments of glass and sparkling snowflakes, a signature from the sun's image and reflection, a luminous work particular to the sun, is apparent. If you do not accept the tiny suns apparent in those innumerable things to be the manifestation of the sun's reflection, then you have to accept the actual existence of a true natural sun in every droplet and fragment of glass facing the light, and in every transparent speck before it, thus descending to the depths of lunacy. So this is one of the classical examples this author uses about the reflection of the sun observed in each and every thing, especially the droplets of water, fragments of glass, how everything is illumined from the light of the sun. So each gets its share. So a signature from the sun's image and reflection is reflected on each and everything in the universe. So, and the luminous part is particular to the sun is apparent. That way the thing is observed, shines, how it reflects the light, shows the signature of the sun. So if someone says that each and everything has its own tiny sun in them, that's how the light is. So in every droplet, every fragment of glass, then that is completely lunatic, as the author says, for the comprehension. So a simple example that explains how this light of the sun reflects on each and everything. Through the reflection, we see that the thing cannot reflect. It doesn't have its own sun, but it is the reflection of the sun. So he is going to tie this into the divine source, the pre-eternal sun, as he calls it. So in just the same way, there is such a signature on all living beings in regard to the giving of life from among the luminous manifestations of the pre-eternal Sun. So it's focusing more on the giving of life of all beings. They are coming into existence. There's a giving of life. So that shows a signature on all living beings. And that is coming from the pre-eternal Sun. Because if you look at the life of anyone, nobody can say, I'm giving myself life. The bird flying cannot say that it's giving itself life, or the tree cannot say it's giving itself life. So each and everything we can see that has been given life by the one that gives life, so the pre-eternal Sun. That supposing all causes were gathered together and had the power to act and possessed will, they still could not imitate that signature. So supposing all the causes, so let's say parents in the case of a child had the power to act and possess will, they still could not imitate that signature of giving life to the child, to the baby. For living beings, all miracles of divine power are points of focus of the divine names. Points of focus of the divine names, which are like the rays of the pre-eternal Sun. So all the divine names are like the rays of the pre-eternal Sun. So they all different colors, different rays are reflecting on the living beings. So the living being becomes the focus of the divine names. So one can deduce or see, observe all different manifestations of qualities in them. Take, for example, a human being can reflect many different qualities. Can be a kind person, generous person, angry person, a very reflective person, generous, open-minded. So a lot of different qualities are manifested on the human being, which are like the rays of the pre-eternal Sun. If that strange inscription of art, that wondrous ordering of wisdom, that manifestation of the mystery of oneness on living beings is not ascribed to the single and eternally besought one. It necessitates accepting that concealed within each living creature and even in a fly or a flower is an infinite creative power, a knowledge encompassing all things, an absolute will with which to govern the universe, an absolute will with which to govern the universe, and even the eternal attributes particular to the necessarily existent one. Thus falling to the most ludicrous degree of misguidance and superstition. Quite simply, it necessitates attributing divinity to each particle of the flower or fly. For a state has been given to those particles, especially if they are in seeds, whereby they look to the living being of which they are a part and take up a position in accordance with its systems and ordering. The particle is even in a position to look to all members of the species to which its living being belongs, or to fly with wings in order to be planted in a place suitable to the continuation of its species and to plant the species flag. In fact, it holds a position whereby that living being's transactions with all other beings may be continued, and its relations with them connected with sustenance, for it is in need of all of them. So looking at the state of a seed, how it propagates its life, wants to continue its species. So it gets planted in the way, a suitable place, and sometimes the air is employed to carry it, sometimes butterflies, sometimes birds. So all different beings are employed, and then they assist. The assistance happens in planting that seed to where it can continue its wherever suitable place to continue its living position. So Christ necessitates attributing divinity to each particle of the flower or fly. Now, can we say that each particle and fly knows the whole universe, has connection with each and every being that is employed, the air, the birds, whatever, the insects, the butterfly? That's why it's very important to see that this phrase, this strange inscription of art, that wondrous ordering of wisdom, that manifestation of the mystery of oneness on living beings. So strange inscription of art. It's an interesting phrase. I don't think I've seen that anywhere. Like nobody says, oh, this art is very strange inscription of someone. But here, this author always has some unique way of highlighting art as a strange inscription of art on the living beings, calls it strange inscription. So somebody has given it to the art to it, and then it's a very strange, as in it's not normal, it's like a miraculous thing. So that wondrous ordering of wisdom, wondrous ordering of wisdom. So the way that things are coming into existence shows that they come in order, according to the order, but we just take it for granted again. That's why wondrous ordering of wisdom is qualifying it so that one can pay attention to it. That manifestation of the mystery of oneness, the mystery of oneness on living beings. So the life that each living being is given is a manifestation of the mystery of oneness. Yeah, so another phrase I thought was interesting was a knowledge encompassing all things. So infinite creative power. Can anybody claim to have infinite creative power? Even the causes that we may think that are doing something, but that's just for one or two events, but then nothing in the universe or anything can even claim to have creative power, yet alone infinite creative power. So that goes into the infinite absolute source of power. A knowledge encompassing all things. So the knowledge has to know each and every aspect of the whole universe. Whoever made it must know exactly what and where the thing has to be put, has to be placed. I mean, human beings, the intelligent, so-called intelligent beings also don't, whatever limited information one may possess doesn't have the knowledge of what will happen to it in the long run or in the grand scale of things. Maybe just little bubble kind of knowledge within the wherever the sphere of the human, maybe his whatever profession he's working on, he will have that particular knowledge of that domain, but not to the full extent, just to a little bit that one can get by with. An absolute will with which to govern the universe. So the whole universe must be under the command of, to be able to allow for such qualities to be manifested, for the things to exist. So knowledge, power, will, three main qualities that we are observing continuously. All right, so my friends, if you would like to share your thoughts, comments, please go ahead. I would love to hear your contributions and comments as well, if anything was attractive or highlighted. Go ahead, Atis Beza, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I think one thing that attracted my attention in this reading was that, the example of the sun reflecting on different reflective surfaces, with that analogy, as the author was saying, you either accept that there is one source, one sun, that the sun is coming from, or you're kind of left to have to accept that each droplet of water or fragment of glass, as it says, in itself has a sun, has a source of light particular to it. What attracted my attention here was also the fact that since within existence, no one thing exists independent of all other things, and I can't look at one thing in a vacuum. It therefore necessitates infinite wisdom and infinite, I think what was the three: will, knowledge, and power, and I guess also the quality of life too, but it requires infinite, let's just use one, infinite knowledge of all other things, because it just doesn't exist in a vacuum. It needs to, like, I could say, oh, but the scope of my life is very limited to, X, Y, and Z, but then those X, Y, and Z things don't exist. Like, I can eat an apple, right? And that's, but then the existence of an apple requires the existence of the atmosphere, the existence of the sun, the existence of the clouds, everything, and then essentially extended out to the entirety of the universe, not even the globe Earth, but like extending even to other planets as well. So what attracted my attention here was, I guess, like, not only would I have to claim that within each reflective piece is a sun in itself, but also that each sun itself must be absolute too. So kind of like absolutes, which which I guess in my practical life it would lead me to a very beggarly position, because I'm in need of many things. But yeah, just some thoughts on what attracted my attention here.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, so we cannot talk about a single fly, as the author also says, without the whole aspect of the universe, all the qualities there, the atmosphere, as you mentioned, the air, the other beings. So the whole concept of a fly or anything that I can, or a human being without the universe, we cannot even mention the human being as well. So everything exists within the whole grand scale of the knowledge, absolute will, absolute power to be there. All right. Any other thoughts or comments before I move to the next page? So but the last thing was the particle to, or the seed to hold a position. So the author is kind of making the case about the needs of each and every being to exist, to keep its sustenance, is also part of the giving of life. So with the giving of life, each thing achieves the need for the living and their sustenance as well. So thus, if that particle is not an official of a possessor of absolute power, and if its relation with him is severed, it has to be ascribed an eye which sees all things and a consciousness which encompasses all things. So that seed or particle would need all the absolute qualities to be able to fit itself or place itself in the position that it's being placed at. And yet, we live in this world thinking that the things are doing whatever they're doing. But you have to pay more attention to how the universe is operating. All right. So let's go to in short. If the miniature suns and various colors in droplets of water and fragments of glass are not attributed to the sun's reflection and the manifestation of its reflection, one has to accept the existence of innumerable suns in place of the one sun. It necessitates accepting an utterly impossible superstition. In exactly the same way, if everything is not attributed to the absolutely powerful one, if everything is not attributed to the absolutely powerful one, it necessitates accepting infinite gods instead of the single God. Indeed, gods to the number of particles in existence, thus falling to the degree of accepting a hundredfold impossibility. All right. To sum up, from every particle, three windows open up onto the light of unity and necessary existence of the pre-eternal sun. So before we go into the three windows, if there's any comment by anyone on how this author is relating the particle example All right, so basically how each particle which holds a position that living beings transact with other beings may be continued, and its relations with its connective, its sustenance is in need of all of them. So however the particle is moving is completely dependent on the absolute knowledge, will, and power of the one who is making it or placing it in the position that it finds itself in. That's why it says we're not an official or possessor of absolute power. Otherwise, can any particle exist by itself without dependency on the one who gave it existence, who gives it life? So that is the impossibility that the author is kind of pointing out for us. Because honestly, in our lives, we don't really pay much attention to how the universe and the things we say, oh, something happened to me, this happened, that happened, because of this, because of that. And then which should remind us that everything is happening by the pre-eternal Son, by the will, knowledge, power. Everything is purposefully made, created. Each particle is placed purposefully according to how it's meant to reflect the qualities of its maker, the one who placed it there. So this is how the shirk can happen, or attributing divinity to other things, if we don't see that each and every particle is only moves, is placed only by the will, knowledge, art of the absolute powerful one. All right, so let's go to the first window. A soldier has a relation with each of the spheres of the military. That is, with his squad, his company, his battalion, his regiment, his division, and the army, and duties in accordance with those relations, and actions in accordance with the duties and army regulations. Particles have similar relations. For example, a lifeless particle in the pupil of your eye has relations with your eye, your head, your body, your powers of reproduction, and attraction and repulsion, with your veins and arteries, and motor and sensory nerves, and with the rest of the human race. And it has duties in relation to each. This shows self-evidently to eyes that are not blind that it is not the work of art and charged official of the pre-eternal all-powerful one. Okay, this shows self-evidently to eyes that are not blind that it is the work of art and charged official. So the particle is a work of art. It is a charged official of the pre-eternal all-powerful one and is under his regulation. I guess capital H, his regulation. Fascinating, beautiful example, I would say. A lifeless particle in the pupil of the eye, or I mean, whatever. Let's say I had something in the morning, all the particles that had relations to all parts of my body, head, body, powers of reproduction, attraction, repulsion, veins, arteries, motor, sensory nerves. So the particles become work of art and charged official of the pre-eternal all-powerful one. Wow, that little particle gains so much value if it's tied to the seen as the work of art and charged official of the pre-eternal one. Otherwise, it's just a particle or a lifeless particle even. Wow, very powerful example, I would think. Second window. All molecules of air may visit all flowers and fruits. They may also enter them and work within them. So the air may enter them and work within them if they are not the subjugated officials of an absolutely powerful one who sees and knows all things. Those wandering molecules would have to know all the systems and structures of the fruits and flowers and their art, and the tailoring of the all different forms, which clothe them with its perfect and all embracing art. Thus, those particles all display as clearly as the sun the rays of a light of divine unity. You may compare light with air and earth with water. So you can replace whatever beings you see, light with air, earth with water. Each and every creation of air, light, earth, water are subjugated officials. In any event, the original sources of things are these four substances. According to modern science, they are hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen, the components of the former elements. So the second window also gives the examples of each and every being, the molecules of air, very powerful example. How the molecules of air do they know it says the structure of all the different fruits, how they are set up, architected, formed, shaped, what qualities it has, soft, hard, heavy, light. So each and every aspect has to be known if the air is the one, molecules of air is the one responsible for its act. But molecules of air are not acting on them by themselves, but are subjugated officials of an absolutely powerful one who has the knowledge, the will, the power to see each and every being. Very beautiful windows. The particle, each particles, how they are moving, behaving, placing themselves according to as officials and obedient officials. Just like in the army or the military example, how the soldier has a relation with all the different spheres of the military and then follows the orders of the army. Or duties and army regulations, same thing with the particles, how they are officials, charged officials performing their duty, having relations with the different things in the universe. Same thing with the molecules of the elements that we are encountering in the universe. They don't know. I mean, it's obvious that they don't know each and everything that they are performing or where the air is going through, but it's acting as a charged official as well. I like these examples. It's a good reminder to think about how the universe, whatever we take, can be seen as charged officials to the will, knowledge, power of the Absolute One. Third window. You fill a flower pot with some earth, which is composed of particles and is the means of growth of any flowering or fruit-bearing plant. Then put some seeds in it. Yes, this is springtime. Many people I see when you go to stores, a lot of plants, flowers are on display. So we use the same soil, earth, composed of particles, and it's the means of growth of any flowering or fruit-bearing plant. So as part of the order, it has to be placed accordingly. Then put some seeds in it. And then miracles happen. The same as the seed of animals does not differ, but is a fluid. So for animals and humans, it's like a fluid. The seeds of all the flowering and fruit-bearing plants in the world do not differ from one another. So they all look the same, pretty much. Same with the liquid for animals and humans. Beings composed of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. They only differ by virtue of the program of their progenitors. They only differ by virtue of the program. So whatever is the program for their progenitors, deposited in them through the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining. So the program is through the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining, according to however they are meant to be. Their determining is also there accordingly in the program. So for the seeds and the plants that are to grow from those seeds, the fruits that are going to, the tree is going to bear, or the human beings relation or animals, when male and female get together and whatever the progeny, the child, however, whatever the child's program is all within the scope of the one who knows and is setting things accordingly, the pen of divine determining, following the order of be, and it is kun fayakun. Like this immaterial writing. So it's like a magical thing. For example, when you put the seed in the soil, and water and sunlight, everything is there. The magical shoot just comes out. I don't know how, but so the immaterial writing of the pen of divine determining is working for that plant. It's really incredible. And of course, all the basic elements, the same soil, elements of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen are employed to be functioning there. All right. This is long. Okay. More examples. Thus, if we put these seeds in turn in the flower pot, if we put these seeds in turn in the flower pot, we believe as though it has occurred that each plant will appear together with its wonderful forms and shapes and parts. If those particles are not officials under the orders of one who knows all the states and conditions of everything, one who knows all the states and conditions of everything, is capable of giving everything a being suitable to it and everything necessary for it. Everything suitable to it and everything necessary for it. And to whose power everything is subjugated with utter facility. Every particle of the earth would then have to contain immaterial factories and printing presses to the number of all the flowering and fruit-bearing plants, so that it could be the source of all those various and different beings whose parts, members, and forms are all distant and different from one another. It is otherwise necessary to attribute to all those beings comprehensive knowledge and a power capable of forming them so that they could be the means of the above. It is otherwise necessary to attribute to all those beings comprehensive knowledge and a power capable of forming them so that they could be the means of the above. That's interesting. We just plant the seed and we believe, yes, because based on our observation, that by putting the seed, following the order, that the plant appears. So that is kind of acting as a veil, which the author kind of pointed out earlier in the previous flashes, to pay attention to the veils that are operating in the order. But we don't see that. We may not see the particles, the seeds, as acting as officials under the orders of the one who knows all the states and conditions of everything. And of course, if it's not the unique one that knows and sets orders, knows the states and conditions of everything, then each particle must know, and which is utterly impossible. So all that knowledge, will, and power cannot be, can the particle claim to have that knowledge, power, and will to be able to come into existence as a plant by itself? Impossible. That is to say, if the connection with Almighty God is severed, it becomes necessary to accept gods to the number of particles of earth, and this is an impossible superstition compounded 1,000 times over. However, when they are officials, it becomes extremely easy. Just as in his king's name and through his power, a common soldier of a mighty king can make a whole country migrate. Just as in the king's name and through his power, a common soldier of a mighty king can make a whole country migrate, or join two seas, or take another king prisoners. So at the command of the monarch of pre-eternity and post-eternity, a fly did away with Nimrod, and an ant destroyed Pharaoh's palace, razing it to the ground. And a fig seed bears the load of a fig tree. So he gives the examples, the author gives the examples of many stories and examples used in the Quran about Nimrod and the fig and how the seed bears the load of fig tree, Pharaoh, so how each and every being is employed in the king's name. So in the king's name and through his power, a common soldier, so like a little fly can cause havoc to an army or to a person. An ant destroyed Pharaoh's palace. So a little thing can gain tremendous power or value or worth if it's connected to an absolute being. So when they are officials, it becomes extremely easy. Otherwise, each one has to possess the knowledge, willpower, each particle. The ant has to know everything, the knowledge, willpower of each and everything. So Hale, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Alaikum. Yeah, I mean, his presentation's interesting here in that he connects belief primarily to his observation of the universe, which is unusual. He's talking about particles and plants and kingdoms, and animals, and particles in the pupil of one's eye. So to connect a one particle to believe is amazing, because it just takes one particle, and it's a interesting presentation because usually belief is presented in a vacuum. I believe this, or I believe that, or we believe this or that. But how? How is that your conclusion, or is it just sort of imitation? And he's saying that rather it's a conclusion from the only way I can make a conclusion, which is the observation of just even one particle. That's all it takes to conclude any and every aspect of belief. It's sort of amazing that one can take a particle that can't even see, one insignificant particle that's transient, that's in motion, that's moving, and then connect that particle is connected to everything else in the universe. Like he gives the pupil of one's eye, it's connected to every other aspect of the human body, every other particle, and thereby the entirety of the universe. But then to say that this points to an absolute source, it's really the shortest possible path one can take to the necessity of belief. So it's quite interesting. That's the way in which he presents it.
You're right, actually. Thank you for sharing that about how the journey of the particle. You're right about this beautiful presentation of the author. I mean, I'm enjoying reading this and trying to connect this. Like how in the Quran we hear these stories about a fly and Nimrod, or the ant and how it dealt with Pharaoh, or the fig seed, or what thing was zaytun, like the fig and the olive, and we just don't see how at the particle level how this author is tying all this together, that each and everything is acting as a soldier, an official of the one who possesses the knowledge, will, and power. So it gains its value, its worth through each particle gains its value and worth through the absolute knowledge and power. So let's see how much we have on this. Wow. Maybe I can just continue reading and then we can start with the 5th next time. Or if you want, we can stop here and continue.
No, you can continue. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. So, moreover, in all particles are two further truthful witnesses. So now is that adding some more things. In all particles are two further truthful witnesses to the Maker's necessary existence and unity. One is that together with their absolute impotence. Oh yeah, we have to see that. in the particle, absolute impotence. They all perform most important and various duties. This is crazy. The way they are insignificant, little, tiny, impotent, but they're performing important and various duties. The other is that despite their lifelessness, they all conform to the universal order and systems, thus displaying a universal consciousness. Yeah, displaying, they all conform to the universal order and systems, thus displaying a universal consciousness. The way they are acting, the way they fit within it, as if they are consciously acting, although they are particles, lifeless. It's like this laptop has different connections, particles, they all seem lifeless at some point. But then when they were all working together as if they are conscious or something. And then they call that AI. That is to say, through the tongue of its impotence, each particle testifies to the necessary existence of the absolutely powerful one. Through the tongue of its impotence, each particle testifies to the necessary existence of the absolutely powerful one. And through its conforming to the order in the world, each testifies to his unity. So by its impotence, it testifies to the existence of the powerful one, knowledgeable one, absolute one, and through the conforming to the order in the world, the way it's acting, following the order in the universe, testifies that to his unity. So navigating through the order that he has set, having knowledge of each and everything in the universe. So that testifies to his unity. Just as every particle testifies in two ways to his being the necessarily existent one of unity, so too on every living being are two signs that he is the single and eternally besought one. So every part in two ways as being the necessarily existent one of unity, so too in every living being are two signs. So every living being, that he is the single and eternally besought one. Yeah, go ahead, Sohail.
Yeah, it's interesting. He makes a distinction between absolute, um, between that sentence, the tongue of its impotence, each particle testifies to the necessary existence of the absolutely powerful one. So in other words, that just one particle, it's all it takes, given the lack of, all these things we witness that happens through one particle, as you mentioned, the qualities that manifest, though the particle has nothing to do with them. Like it doesn't have any knowledge or power or will or mercy or compassion or wisdom or, nothing of that sort. They testify that they are simply operating by one who must be absolutely powerful. Like he must have be all powerful, all knowing, his will must be absolute. But in the same sense, that particle, as he says, in conformity with the rest of the world, shows that all particles then point to that same one. So in other words, not only does he have authority over one particle, but he must therefore have authority and control and power over all particles. So it's interesting because all it takes is just for, while one particle maybe point to an absolute particle, when all it takes is for one particle to destroy his unity. In other words, if there was sort of chaos in the world just from one particle, but we don't witness that, there is an order that is permeates the entirety of the cosmos. Nothing sort of breaks that order. So therefore, he must be one who is powerful over all things, not just one thing. And therefore, they point to his unity. And in some sense, they both are saying the same thing. They look to one another. Being absolute, must be that one has power over not just one thing, but all things. And if one has power over all things, that therefore means must have power over one thing, and therefore must be absolute. So, but that's in some sense he's talking about two different things. I don't know what the original Turkish is, but it's like the difference between being ahad and wahid. So, um, and that he is the single. Not sure what that is in Arabic. Maybe it's Huwal Ahad, or yeah, that might be what it is. And then eternally Bisabi was Samad. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that.
No, good thoughts. I think you're right. So Ahad and Wahid. So Ahad is absolutely powerful one. Wahid, unity. His unity, yes, everything comes from him. Then it goes into Samadhi, as you said, that everything is dependent on him in their existence. So it's also interesting you pointed out that just look at one particle and you can see how that one particle, study it. You don't have to look at all the particles. And if one particle does this, then all the particles definitely follow the same. Otherwise, if one particle disobeys, then there's just everything falls apart. There's a chaos which we do not see, right? So yes, on all living beings are a seal of divine oneness and a stamp of eternal besottedness. A seal of divine oneness and a stamp of eternal besottedness. For each displays together in the mirror of his being most of the divine names. The manifestations of which are apparent in the universe. Quite simply, like a point of focus, each particle, each being displays the manifestation of the greatest name of ever-living and self-subsistent one. Thus, since it shows a sort of shadow of the oneness of the divine essence under the veil of the name of giver of life. So under the name of the giver of life, shows a sort of a shadow of the oneness of the divine essence. So the oneness. It bears a stamp of divine oneness. And since the living being is like a miniature sample of the universe and a fruit of the tree of creation, it shows a seal of divine eternal besottedness, which conveys altogether with ease to the tiny sphere of its life its needs, which are as many as the universe. To the tiny sphere of its life its needs, which are as many as the universe. That is to say, this shows it has a sustainer whose regard and favor take the place of all things. Everything in existence cannot take the place of his regard. This shows that it has a sustainer whose regard and favor take the place of all things. Everything in existence cannot take the place of his regard. Yeah, so he'll go ahead.
So, at least from what I understand from that is that, um, in other words, all things demonstrate or point to the fact that it's their maker, that singular one, that same one, who has bestowed them with the qualities that they manifest. And that they cannot take the place of his regard. In other words, they can't take ownership of them. They can't say that they do it themselves and then leave him aside. Rather, everything necessarily points to him. It's inescapable, that truth. Um, so, and in some sense, they take his regard and favor take the place of all things. In other words, in some sense, that becomes the most important aspect of the things themselves, is that they point to him. Like, that is the object of why something even exists. Like, that is the point, the meaning, the purpose, to point towards him. Not the thing itself. That's not the purpose in and of itself, but that it is he who must be, whose dominion must be supreme over all things. So, um, but yeah, that's what I took away from that.
Yeah, thank you. So each particle only looks to him. His regard and favor goes back to him. So furthermore, this situation shows that its sustainer is in need of nothing, nor does anything diminish his treasury, nor is anything at all difficult for his power. This then is a sort of seal of eternal besottedness.
Yeah, I was just going to say to that is that just one particle shows that, that the fact that even one particle happens to exist, happens to be, when it doesn't have to be, it's brought from non-being into being, as the Quran says, like, created in some sense from nothing. No thing was required to bring it into being. That necessarily requires a power beyond all human imagination to go from no thing to something. And all it takes is one particle to demonstrate that. Therefore, it shows that that sustainer can not only just bring it into being, but then bring it into being at every moment, sustain it with all its needs, whether it's the particle or a human being, which is an assembly of particles, to sustain all his needs or her needs. So that shows that that sustainer must not therefore be in need of anything, because if they can do it, that means they're the ones that are the one they are the one that's providing, not the things themselves. So, and to go from non-being into being means that, like, I didn't. It's not like the human being where I need to, like, if I make something. Let's say I have some bricks and I have a set number of bricks to make a wall, and now I'm diminished in the number of bricks I have when I make that wall, because my source of strength is not absolute. I don't have like an infinite treasury to do that. But to bring something in from non-being, to have no thing even necessary to do it, no some prerequisite requirements or some material or ingredients, that must be absolute, that power, that will, that knowledge. Um, and therefore cannot be diminished.
Okay, Alhamdulillah. So that's the sort of seal of eternal besottedness. So each and everything, every particle is looking to him for its existence, for its sustenance. That's why the Samadhiya, I think, is eternally besought.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's eternal besottedness. In other words, it's not just temporary needs, but eternal needs. Like, a particle desires life, let's say, just from the fact that it is, and it, um, you know, wants to continue being. And you can extrapolate that, like the human being or plants or animals, which are just assembly of particles in certain arrangement. They desire life or maintenance, but it's not really just life for just a temporary, because that wouldn't make sense. What's the point of that? But life eternally speaking, consciousness eternally speaking. will, eternally speaking, knowledge, power, eternally speaking, mercy or compassion or beauty or wisdom, all those things need of internally. It does not just the human being, but everything. And then you can drill it down to even the smallest of particles are in need of that eternally. And the only one that can do that must be the one who's absolute and in whose hands are all things.
Thank you for pointing out the eternal part, the eternally, we see, looking for eternal besottedness. So, thus, on every living being are a seal of divine oneness and stamp of eternal besottedness. Yes, through the tongue of its life, every living being recites. So interesting. Every living being recites, say he is God the One, the eternally besought. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad. It's interesting that through the tongue of its life, every living being recites this. In addition to these two seals are several more important windows, but since they have been explained in detail in other places, our discussion here has been brief. Seeing that each particle in existence at once opens up three windows and two openings onto the unity of the necessarily existent, three windows and two openings onto the unity of the necessarily existent, and life too opens two doors. You can compare how all the levels of beings from particles to the sun spread the light of knowledge of the all-glorious one. Thus, you can understand from this the degrees of progress in knowledge of God and the levels of awareness of His presence. Alhamdulillah, this was very beneficial. So, the degrees of progress in knowledge of God is endless. The levels of awareness of His presence is endless. This was a good way of how the author walked us through the one particle, how each of the particles' existence points to His divine unity, eternal besottedness, divine oneness. All right, I can stop here for today, inshallah. We will continue next time. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma alamtana. Innaka anta al-alim al-hakim. Wa akhiru da'wahum alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Bi hurmati surat al-Fatiha.